I work in the business applications group. I spend about half my time essentially working with ISVs on their solutions, and I spend the other half of my time working on AI. I'm old school. I've been around 25 years, so I sort of know where all the bodies are. So I get asked to kick off lots of sessions. That's ultimately what happens here. One of the things we spend our time on is trying to take the core platforms that we're working on, so the Power Platform, the common data model underneath that, and the tool sets, and extend those for different industries. So when we built the common data model, it's great for your base set of entities and your base information, but if you're in any specific industry, there's a set of information that's specific to you that doesn't belong in the core framework, but incredibly important if we're trying to get ISVs and SIs and customers to work together in a specific area. So we started to build some of these core accelerators. One of them was for healthcare, and so if you think about healthcare, you think, okay, doctors and patients and records and medicine. We're in a public preview now for automotive. We're in the same for financial services, where you might think of bank or monetary fund or CD. So we're trying to do these extensions per industry in the right way with the community involved, open source them, put them up on GitHub, make it available, put some sample code there, and off we go. And so that's a framework we're using. We did a session earlier today where we spent some time on automotive and financial services. We go to industry events and do others of these. This session is specific to public sector and nonprofits. I'm not the expert in that space. In fact, I'm not the expert in any of the spaces. So what we do is we ask the experts or people who at least live and breathe it to come up. So Eric's going to spend the next 45 minutes or so on the journey we've been on. And the whole goal here is to create a framework that allows us to have an end-to-end conversation or capability set for any industry. Often we do things that are, historical line of business applications are forms over data. So I have a customer care form, I fill it in, I get a database of customer care information, I have a product form, I fill it in. So you end up with all these disparate databases that don't connect very well, that make it very hard to build a customer or partner or any other 360 view. We build a layer on top of all those databases, we suck the data in, we build a cube out of it, and we try and make something work. The goal here is to start one level lower with a common data framework, extend it per industry so that we can build an end-to-end experience. This is one of the places that we first invested in. Eric and his team are the experts in the space. We like working with the ISVs, the SIs, and the customer/partners in the space to build these out. And so with that, I'm going to hand off to Eric and let him walk us through that. But just so you know, this is part of a broader initiative from Microsoft with our partners to try and help industry by industry get the frameworks in place. And so with that, I'm going to hand over to the expert. Thanks, Eric.
All right, thanks. So we live in a world of hopeful stories. A lot of progress has been made in a lot of different areas on really, really challenging problems. We've cut global poverty in half over the last decade, particularly in India and China. And while that's come at great cost to the environment, much more progress is being made in helping lift people out of extreme poverty. We've made huge progress on some diseases. Polio is nearly eradicated. A lot of progress against meningitis in the global south. But also huge problems remain. Over 800 million people still live in extreme poverty. 124 million people face food insecurity, extreme food insecurity every day. And in the hour of it will take to listen to this presentation, 120 people will die from malaria, more than half of them children under 5. So who are the organizations and how is the world responding to these huge challenges? Primarily, it's nonprofits and nonprofit organizations all around the world, big and small. How Microsoft works with nonprofits, we qualify nonprofits as 501c3s for the purposes of how we treat them from a Tech for Social Impact team. We focus on nonprofits, philanthropies, and United Nations organizations. Of those 4 million nonprofits, 97% of them are organizations of 50 people or less. They don't have a lot of extra cash to invest in themselves. They don't have a lot of extra cash to invest in tools or systems or retooling their processes. They need simple, easy-to-use tools. They need digital technology. They really don't know how to get there, though, and so we're here to help with that. The other thing to know about nonprofit is it's not a single industry. Within the nonprofit sector, which is really just a tax code structure, 501c3, there are dozens of different kinds of industries. A healthcare organization operates very differently than an animal shelter, differently than a child sponsorship organization. And so when you're working with nonprofit as a partner, you really need to understand the different and unique nature of the requirements that they have in the accomplishment of their missions. But it is a big sector. Those 4 million organizations employ over 20 million people globally and account for about 5% of the GDP in the United States alone. So we formed Tech for Social Impact inside Microsoft 2 years ago. Microsoft has a long history of philanthropic giving going back over 30 years. We have a huge participation rate for employee giving across our 150,000 employees worldwide. We have Microsoft Philanthropies, which formed almost 10 years ago now, which is focusing on applying grants and interventions around humanitarian aid, disaster relief, digital skilling, et cetera. But what we weren't doing is really focusing on nonprofit as a first-class industry. How do we get deep knowledge inside Microsoft about how you nonprofits operate, and how do we work with partners to help lift those partners up, shine a light on those partners that are working well in the nonprofit sector and making sure they get the support they need, and recruit net new partners to work in the nonprofit sector. So Tech for Social Impact, we incorporate a partner ecosystem team. So we're building a whole channel for partners there. I lead the solutions team. I have a small team of architects and an outsourced engineering budget. We work directly with partners to deliver purpose-built solutions to the nonprofit sector. Get really excited when those solutions are able to scale to thousands of organizations. We have a whole team focused on managing the accounts for different nonprofits and ensuring that they are easily able to access our technology and able to implement that technology, working together with customer success staff, as well as working with our philanthropy teams that provide digital skilling resources to those organizations. So for us at Microsoft, it's really no longer a question about what can technology do, it's what should technology do. Technology is a hammer and not every problem is a nail. And it's when you're working with really any organization, but particularly true in nonprofits, there's a lot of digital skilling and change management that has to go along with looking at a new tool. New tools amplify bad process, and it really behooves organizations to take a step back and really think about what they want to do with technology, both in the accomplishment of their mission and in the efficacy and efficiency of their operations. So from a Tech for Social Impact perspective, we sit inside Microsoft Philanthropies, rolling up ultimately to Brad Smith, the company president. And we invest in two ways. From a philanthropies perspective, we provide services and build out broadband in rural areas. We provide digital skilling to K through 12 to kids. We provide job reskilling for communities that have been hit particularly hard by the fourth industrial revolution, where jobs have been disrupted by the digital economy, and how can we invest in some of those areas, encourage innovation in those areas, and train people in new skills to allow them to engage in digital-based jobs. We, of course, encourage our employee engagement, and we're very quietly one of the largest corporate philanthropies on the planet. Last year, we gave out about $1.6 billion US dollars in software, cash, and services. The majority of that is our employee giving, matched 100% by the company. And then we also provide, as I mentioned, the capacity building skills inside nonprofits. That's digital skills for staffing, and it's also certifications for any technology professionals in those nonprofits. On the digital transformation side, which is really where Tech for Social Impact primarily focuses as a team with inside Philanthropies, we focus on all the technology and all the enablement then on how you can use the power of Microsoft's tools across all of our different stacks in the accomplishment of a nonprofit's mission and in building efficiency into their operations. So everything from constituent management, working with volunteers, working with donors, working with beneficiaries, to empowering employees in complex staffing models, relying a lot on volunteers and a lot on external partners and partners spanning different regions and different locations, into optimizing operations, and particularly for organizations that deal with logistics, in how do you deliver humanitarian aid, collect that aid as gift in kind, get it to a depot in the global south, and respond to disasters or crises by getting the right aid to the right point at the right time without getting stockouts, which means practically on the ground that lives are being lost. Innovation for impact, particularly around data and data collection and making sense of that data, shortening the feedback loop between when you capture the data in the field and when you can see the results of that data visualized in a tool and allow you to take informed action on that. That's a big focus for us and a big focus about how we work within the Power Platform, but also how we work with many partner solutions on different platforms. And finally, all of this has to be done on a secure and compliant platform. Many organizations work with data, particularly about vulnerable populations, and it's crucial for nonprofits. Nonprofits run on trust. It's crucial that they take good care of that data, and we want to make sure that we bring all of the power that Microsoft puts into our security and compliance and GDPR compliance, all of that, to any solutions that we bring into the sector. Another way that we think about what should technology do is we really want to make sure that we're not just investing in technology and dreaming this stuff up ourselves. We really want input from the sector that helps shape our own strategy on where we're going to go with the solutions themselves. We do this in a couple different ways. One is my team runs a steering team made up of nonprofits, large and small, donors, large and small, both private foundations and institutional donors, and we work very closely with this team to help shape and build out the common data model, which I'll talk about in detail in a moment. But we also wanted to take that to scale. How do we get the voice of any and all nonprofits into this? So we engaged an organization called Mission Measurement. Mission Measurement has a project called the Impact Genome, where they've identified common indicators across many different subsectors within the nonprofit industry and defined 132 common outcomes. And the goal here is that they want to try to align common standards for what nonprofits can measure and how they communicate the impact of their work back to their donors. What we weren't seeing in this is how do nonprofits also measure how they adopt digital technology. So we've worked with them to identify a trial set of 32 technology genes, using their parlance, that measure what are the most impactful technology solutions that they could bring inside the organizations, either on a mission side or on the operations side. We developed a survey, sent that survey out to 30,000 organizations. It's still out there. It's early days. We're still collecting data. But some of the findings may surprise folks that aren't in the sector, and those of you that are in the sector may recognize some of these. These are typically the areas that donors don't fund. It's rare for donors to give institutional support grants or grants that specifically support solutions around financial management. Few and far between are the grants that allow organizations to really build efficient systems in their finance portfolios. So we took all this and we took a reference model that we developed together with NetHope, which is a consortium of over 50 of the largest international nonprofits in the world. We used that reference model to see where across top-line scenarios, where there were strengths on Microsoft's different stacks, where we had opportunities to build solution off those strengths, where we had gaps, where we could bring partners in, and help educate the company and educate our partners about where we could really make a difference in investing in nonprofit solutions. So the way we work this now, so as a full industry team, working through our partner ecosystem team and through my team and a close partner Threshold World, we developed a common data model for nonprofits. So based on the advice of our steering team, based on interviews with thousands of different nonprofits and hundreds of different partners, we created an initial set of attributes and entities that speak directly to the business, the uniqueness that nonprofits face. And so if you look at Dynamics as an 80% solution generic to any industry, the common data model then applies that nonprofit industry layer on top of it, what Googs talked about at the beginning of the session. So our strategy then is to work with private sector partners who help deliver key scenarios left to right, from everything from donor prospecting all the way through project closeout, built on our integrated tool sets through D65 and Power Platform that is using common models through the common data model for nonprofits, and connectors to external data sources so that nonprofits can aggregate data across platforms without the expectation that everybody migrate all of their data at once into Microsoft tools. The first iteration of this was released in November of last year, and we focused first on program delivery. This is the heart of what nonprofits do, organizing their projects into a program project activity structure, applying a results framework around the output, outcome, and indicator structure tied to a results set, allows the organizations to set baseline, measure against those baselines, track results, and tie those results then back to donors and back to individual constituents. So now you can draw a thread from your program back to your donors and help build trust by telling that impact story. We did this deliberately. We didn't want to start with constituent and start with donor and do a CRM model first. We really wanted to tackle the hard part, which is how do you structure an actual project and have a separate project structure for tackling the work nonprofits do from the project structure that accounting does for the transactions and the booking of the revenue. Those are very different things. And in my experience in nonprofits, I often see those two things conflated. So we wanted to make sure we pulled those apart and put program delivery front and center. So that first launch of the Nonprofit Accelerator and CDM back in November, we had 14 different partners. Partners that are commonly associated with Microsoft, like Avanade. Avanade created a nonprofit practice specifically as a result of this and is now leaning in heavily into the nonprofit sector. Partners not normally associated with the Microsoft brand, like Blackbaud. Blackbaud is 20 years in the sector developing donor and donation processing solutions, is now integrating with Microsoft Dynamics and mapping their solutions to the common data model. And net new partners, startups like Threshold World, who was begun by Dan Lamont, who is the founder and former CEO of Round Corner, Salesforce.org's largest ISV, decided to leave that company and found a new company focused squarely on what we're doing in Microsoft from an open platform and open data perspective. So from that V1, the magic of this, in my opinion, is we're building all of this on the foundation that the Business Applications Group has provided. In publishing the common data model generic to any industry, we're able to take that and extend those entities to be relevant into the nonprofit sector, and it leaves room for us to create net new entities as well. What it takes for us as a company is we have to keep focus on those different industries and keep investing in those different industries. And so from my team's perspective in particular, we really lean in to keep this part of the work that we do alive and are doing releases every 3 months on it right now. Whether we can keep that pace in the future is TBD. But what that means is we did a 1.1 launch back in February and did a 2.0 launch in April. And what we're building on is we're building out more and more functionality and incorporating sector standards into the data model. So we now align to IATI, the International Aid Transparency Initiative. This is a standard set of how you measure results that's backed by United Nations and DFID, the UK aid agency. And it lays out how you can track your indicators and track your results and publish those results in a standard XML tag format. And then that data can then be aggregated with any other IATI formatted data, and you can tell a more strategic story about any organization working on malaria, for example, can publish their IATI results, aggregate those results in one place, and layer visualization on top of it. We also built out functionality for beneficiaries, for volunteer management, and for connecting the work that nonprofits do all the way from a donor through to beneficiaries. And so now you can start to handle sponsorship scenarios or track the services an individual beneficiary gets back to an individual donor. As much of the technology solution our launches include, they also include a great amount of detail for partner enablement and how we ramp our partners and work with our partners to work better in the sector. So the top 3 things with that version, first and foremost, we want to really reinforce the building of trust with donors. Connecting the fundraising to the results framework is the first step in there. I'll talk in a few moments about how we're closing that loop between the the program delivery and the booking the transactions in F&O. We wanted to focus also on improving program efficacy in building those connections to beneficiaries, incorporating international standards like IATI. And we wanted to make it easier for organizations that work with volunteers to engage those volunteers, to make sure they have the proper skills, the proper certifications, and can be routed and located to where the areas of most need are. There's a lot of challenges that nonprofits face, particularly nonprofits that work with large groups of volunteers in situations where they may be working directly with beneficiaries, people in natural disasters, or people in urban communities getting health and human services for homelessness or drug addiction. There's a lot of sensitivity to how that works and how it works when you're working with someone particularly outside of your organization, and so we pay a lot of attention to rights and privacy when we build these solutions out. So looking now across the sitemap for D365 on how those different elements are realized in V2, we have the solution itself, and what we produce as Microsoft is we talk about it as a 20% solution, which really isn't the right language to use since Dynamics is an 80% solution. We're taking it farther, but we're not building finished customer applications. What we're doing is we're building sample applications, we're building templates, we're building dashboards, we're incorporating the data model itself into the different areas and components into the schema of D365, and then making that available for partners to finish. One of the things we also notice about the nonprofit sector is the partner ecosystem is still nascent. There are some great partners that have really leaned in and have been leaning in for years, that have been working with TSI for years, that have solutions today. We want to support those organizations and make sure they're able to consume what we're doing, that what we're doing doesn't stifle that innovation. But we also need to go a bit farther to help encourage further innovation in the sector and further participation by partners. So I'm going to pivot from here and talk a little bit about what this actually means and how it's realized in the Dynamics tool itself. So first, it's now possible for organizations to track the flow of funds through the whole life cycle, from the campaigns and sourcing their funds, working with either individual donors in major gift scenarios, individual contributions, or working with institutions or foundations in grant-based scenarios, where you're working on a complex grant, multi-year grant with a complex set of restrictions built off a program budget and a complex staffing model. So you can take all of the donations and the different types of donations as they come in and follow the flow of funds all the way through program delivery using the common data model now. Then pivoting to how nonprofits then take that and track outcomes. So we've built in the IATI framework and a basic log frame framework that we're continuing to invest in that allow organizations to take their individual programs and projects, set first of all an organizational objective. What are they trying to achieve? Is it aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals? Is it a different kind of goal? And build your programs and projects off of that with discrete indicators and results frameworks, and then tie all of that back to individual funding. So a program in our schema allows you to have a single project or single program with multiple sources of funding, multiple grants, multiple individual contributions tied to recurring giving or tied to campaigns. You're tracking your results in that program delivery framework and can discretely tie back the results back to what individual donors may be asking you. On this piece, one of the interesting outcomes for us as an industry vertical team, working through our steering team, because our steering team is made up of institutional donors like DFID, of private foundations like Gates Foundation, and of influential nonprofits, data architects and enterprise architects, M&E officers, and C-level people in those nonprofits, it's created a cross-sector conversation. And this is a really important piece of that conversation, because now this has turned into a conversation about how can we, Microsoft, help foster standards across donors and grantees to make it easier and more consistent in the questions that donors ask of their grantees. So if you're going after a program goal around controlling malaria, and you're the Gates Foundation, can you ask consistent questions in your results framework that you're providing the nonprofit and have those questions be similar to the questions that DFID asks if they're also investing in malaria control and that same nonprofit organization accepts a grant from you? There is a tremendous amount of effort that nonprofits put into donor reporting and trying to report back to individual donors when individual donors trying to do the right thing are asking for data back on the value of their investment. And so if we can get consistency across donors, it really helps nonprofits to lower their costs and be more efficient in their monitoring and evaluation. Bit of an aside there, but it's spun into now a really interesting conversation separate and above the technology that we're producing. Now into IATI. So IATI has grown over the years, and it is now mandated by governments in the UK, Belgium, and others. Any grantee that accepts aid from DFID, for example, has to publish their data in IATI format. So we've incorporated the entire activity and organizational structure from IATI into the CDM and therefore into the schema of Dynamics. We've incorporated the narrative translations of IATI into the schema as well. That means you can do data collection in native languages in your field locations and have those narrative translations translated into your headquarters language so you can get insights faster. We're working now both on validation, on ingesting IATI data and doing validation on that data to make sure you're validating the data before it gets into the ETLs to load it into the common store, and also on the publication of IATI data. So you'll see in a subsequent release we'll be talking about in detail in July, you'll be able to take an organization's IATI framework and publish it to the XML standard straight out of Dynamics. So on the partner enablement side, so the whole concept around the common data model is that it is a nonprofit common data model. It's not a Microsoft common data model for a nonprofit. We encourage and want and really seek input from different partners on different platforms to contribute to this. The stronger the participation across platforms, the stronger the standard will become, and the more cost will be taken out of the equation for nonprofits that are trying to implement digital technology to achieve their missions. So we publish hundreds of pages of guides around the model itself, around the relationships between the entities and the attributes in the data models themselves, the ERD diagrams, and the sample applications. We also have mapping templates. If you are a partner that is already working on a solution in nonprofits, you can use the mapping template, look at your data schema, and see how your data schema maps to the common data model. In this way, I talk about CDM really being a Rosetta Stone between platforms, and you can take your Salesforce data, map it to the CDM, and map that then to your Microsoft data and have an aggregated data set that allow you to get deeper insights faster. We've pre-built some of these, and also some partners have leaned in and built some of these. So we have a map pre-built for the Nonprofit Success Pack from Salesforce. Blackbaud leaned in and created one for Luminate Online. Jackson River did the same for Springboard, and Classy and Fluxx and others are also in the process of creating their own mappings to the CDM. And then lastly, we have a portal. We actively seek feedback from partners, from nonprofits, help us make the common data model better, help us make the accelerator better. This is only as good as the input that we get from across the sector. Everything we do is available publicly on GitHub. So we don't hold this behind any kind of Microsoft firewall. In fact, any projects and solutions that my team works on, we publish to GitHub, or we make available for nonprofits at no extra cost. It does require an underlying subscription to some part of Microsoft stack to utilize these things. We have a 60 to 80% discount standard for any Microsoft products available to any qualified nonprofit. Make it easy to access those tools and make it easier for you to adopt those tools. But we don't charge a premium then on top of that to use the accelerator or to use the common data model. We're trying to really go through our partners and go directly to you so that you can use these purpose-built solutions just off the straight discounts that we apply. So I talked a bit before about the 14 partners that we had when we launched this in November. Since that launch in November, that's grown to 60 partners. Increasingly, these are partners that are new to Microsoft or partners that are new to nonprofit that see the value and the investment that Microsoft is making in the CDM and in the different industry verticals, and now see how easy it is to access Microsoft technologies and some of the offers and licensing discounts and donations that we provide organizations. And so it's creating a lot of opportunity for innovation, creating a lot of opportunity for interoperability between systems as well. This includes partners like Quantic. If you were at Quantic's session earlier where they were on stage with Leonard Cheshire, they're implementing D365 and Power Platform with Leonard Cheshire. Leonard Cheshire is a large nonprofit based out of the UK that works with people of different abilities and allows them better economic access and tools and counseling to live independent lives. They're implementing D365 for customer engagement as well as F&O and a Power Platform layer on top of that allow their staff a rich mobile experience to engage with those beneficiaries. The solution is interesting to me in that it combines two different industry accelerators. They used both the nonprofit industry accelerator and they used the health industry accelerator. We do a lot of work in Microsoft across the different industry accelerators to make sure there are no collisions. We also do a lot of work to make sure there's as little duplication as possible. So for example, education may use our grant solutions or our donor management solutions. Nonprofit may use health's patient registry or case management solutions in the CDM. And in that way, we can make it richer. And then we work across those teams and work with the business applications group so that when we make iterations on each of those industry accelerators and the CDMs, we're not creating collisions, we're not deprecating things that will break functionality that we know is out there, and that we're doing that thoughtfully and doing that with as much communication as possible. We also see strong adoption in the nonprofit community. So some of the largest, most impactful nonprofits on the planet now are using Dynamics or in the process of implementing Dynamics. This is organizations from everything from Plan International that is implementing Dynamics today to support their child sponsorship work. Leonard Cheshire I talked about. Danish Refugee Council is a large organization working with refugees around the world. We're facing the largest refugee crisis ever with over 68 million displaced peoples. Danish Refugee Council is one of the largest nonprofits on the planet addressing that with nearly 10,000 staff working globally using Dynamics as their platform. One organization I'm going to highlight here is Team Rubicon. So Team Rubicon is they were digitally born. They're a relatively new organization. They started directly after a hurricane and work with about 300 staff and a group of over 80,000 volunteers. I think it's actually over 100,000 volunteers now. And Team Rubicon, most of their volunteers are veterans of the US military, but they have volunteers of all different skills and capabilities. They need to make sure that the volunteers that they have are certified to use heavy machinery. They're coming in, first responders directly after a disaster, helping clean things up, helping get people back on track and make their homes livable, make sure they have access to food and services. So we've been working with them on implementing Microsoft platform solutions across all of their different businesses, particularly around their volunteer management solution. So I'm going to roll a video here and you can hear directly from them about it.
Team Rubicon is a disaster response organization that utilizes the skill sets of veterans and first responders to rapidly deploy to disaster zones all throughout the world.
It started out after the Haiti earthquake with 8 individuals, and it's grown to almost 85,000 volunteers.
Hurricane Harvey was an eye-opener for us in terms of our volunteer management system needs. It was a catalyst. We witnessed so many inefficiencies, systems just breaking down, and we could have just deployed folks in a normal way.
Trying to keep track of 85,000 volunteers is not an easy task. That's when innovation had to happen.
We've decided to build something from the ground up, really in an enterprise capacity with Microsoft.
We need to make an investment and make sure that we've got the right partners. Microsoft made the investment, Team Rubicon made the investment, and it all pointed towards Whiffly. They were able to bring the expertise we needed.
The core engine of this entire volunteer management system is the Dynamics 365 platform. Whiffly's job is to help them implement these services.
Microsoft Dynamics 365 is our heartbeat. Azure, Office 365, and Teams. Every one of those pieces comes together in an incredible manner. You start to build a greater awareness and understanding of every component of the operation. The people, the costs, the time it takes to do a task.
Not only can you get people out the door and on the ground to help people faster, but you can ensure that they're willing to come back and do it again.
When we started talking about this opportunity to create a volunteer management system, one of the things that was in the back of everybody's mind, we want to create a tide that lifts all the boats. Every nonprofit that touches this should be able to do things better. Every volunteer that engages across the world finds benefit because someone has started this spark, and hopefully it's something that grows around the world.
There are so many organizations that rely on volunteers in this country, not just in disaster response, but across every sector of the nonprofit industry.
You have this open source model where all of us are contributing to each other's success. This is just the beginning.
If we can help 100 or 1,000 nonprofits with the same work, all to create this positive impact, not just for the Team Rubicon survivors, but also for the entire nonprofit sector.
When you talk about potential, it's Microsoft, and it's Whiffly, and it's Team Rubicon, and it's this aspiration to simply help more people.
So that's how this works. We work with partners and directly with nonprofits. We help those nonprofits realize their solutions that are specifically enabling their own missions. And through our work with the partners, we take the reusable components of what that partner has developed and we incorporate that back into the CDM and back into the Dynamics Accelerator so that everything we do then builds and builds and builds, and we're not doing it's single implementation with one nonprofit and then replicating it, redoing it over and over again. The idea is that we want to incorporate all of these best practices, all of these solutions, and start to create a richer experience that takes the customization out of trying to use solutions that are generally created for commercial scenarios, much more available for a nonprofit. So where do we go from here? So from here, we've done a lot of work on the common data model and accelerators for a lot of the CE scenarios, a lot of the program delivery and constituent engagement models. Now we're flipping the bit and we're starting to build out then the common data model and the accelerator on the F&O scenarios. So now this is how you connect the transactions and the accounting that organizations have to do, that accountant project view of a grant or a program back to donors, making sure the restrictions flow through, calculation of overhead rates, release of restrictions, transactions, rev rec, all the things that you need to do in nonprofit. We're also addressing some of the data quality issues and data transparency issues through some of what I talked about on the IATI side, doing the validation of IATI data in and the publication of IATI data out. We are building in synchronization to the IATI standard, so IATI is continuing to evolve, and we're going to continue to evolve with it and allow organizations the ability to take in updates to the common data model as they come up and as we align to additional national or international standards that are used in different subverticals in the nonprofit sector. And then we're going to be improving around monitoring and evaluation. So we have some of the basics in place now around our program delivery module. Now we're going to go deeper and handle concepts like theory of change and log frames to have specific structures that we know specific donors are asking for to allow organizations to align to those standards. They're already using them and publish their results out and trying to further that conversation about consistency across donors. And we're building out connectors to external data sources. What are the data sources that nonprofits commonly use, and where can we start to build those connectors to create a richer data experience and aggregated data experience that we can then extend the common data model and the work we do in nonprofits outside of D365 and into other parts of our stack. D365, it is an awesome tool if you are a mid-size or larger organization, but what about the 97% of organizations that are 50 people or less? It is a sledgehammer for those orgs, and Business Central may be appropriate for some of those, but these are organizations that may be running their business on Excel today or QuickBooks today. And having easy turnkey solutions, remember they don't have a lot of money to invest in configuring solutions themselves or hiring a partner to come in and really help them implement it all the time. They need easier access to tools that are relevant to the scenarios. So we are, a few months ago, we announced we're also investing in a suite of tools that we're calling Operations Essentials. These are Power Platform-based, zero code, zero server solutions, model-driven applications, with Teams add-ins, so organizations can use their O365 subscription and Teams to tie into these. With all the business rules built in, these are finished applications that align to the CDM entities, so it aligns to the same standard that we're building out into our D365 solutions. We're starting these first on the operations side, so records management, records retention, project and cost center management, planning, budgeting, timekeeping, staffing, those kinds of things. Just the basics of how do you plan, instantiate a project, and how do you start to book transactions for that project. Enhanced collaboration, we're also publishing a suite of Teams add-ins for different nonprofit scenarios. Could be anything from working with your board of directors all the way through how are you actually engaging with volunteers in the field and coordinating between volunteer groups that are providing services. Over time, we'll extend the suite of tools to handle more complex volunteer management scenarios, to handle governance essentials, duty of care, or incident reporting, and then into basic marketing for campaign management and engaging with constituents. This whole suite is built on top of O365, so it requires just an O365 subscription plus a Power Platform P1, P2. All of that is on the Office side, we donate E1 to nonprofits, and then on the Power Platform side, we heavily discount it for nonprofits. And so these are very low-cost options for the smallest nonprofits out there. And we're not stopping there. We also announced a data and AI toolkit. Increasingly, as Microsoft, we're incorporating data and AI into all different parts of our stack at all different levels. And what we want to try to do is get data solutions and advanced workload solutions, turnkey solutions, into the hands of nonprofits. An example here is some work that we've been doing with Amnesty International. Amnesty came to us. They're looking at using digital technology to measure sentiment for some of the human rights campaigns that they work on. So they're an advocacy organization working to improve human rights or reinforce human rights. One of the things they wanted to do is do social listening to detect and respond to online violence against women. They also wanted to detect executions around the world and more quickly build up advocacy campaigns and responses in their quest to end capital punishment. So we built a tool around keyword sentiment analysis. It allows you to enter any set of keywords. It will listen to Twitter and other social media platforms. It will use Bing News and crawl Bing News in all languages and bring all of that back into a Power BI dashboard that allow you to then take action based on those results. We took that basic pattern for Amnesty and now built a tool that any organization can pick up and use and enter any keywords that are relevant to their organization and their mission. The fundamental layer there. So AI is often an advanced concept for many nonprofits, and so we also want to make sure that we're paying attention just to the data foundation. And so we're working on a variety of projects here. Part of it I mentioned before, in building connectors to external data sources to be able to aggregate data across different internal and external sources and have visualization on top of it. We're also working on solutions that go a bit beyond that. How can you have those connectors go through an ETL process that's relevant to your organization to validate, transform, and normalize the data into a single data store, and then build a rights engine around that that helps protect the data, particularly data that you may have around vulnerable populations or data that is subject to GDPR. We're working projects here both with Oxfam and with DFID. With Oxfam is 19 different organizations around the world. They're one of the largest and oldest nonprofits out there, almost a $2 billion nonprofit. And they, like many organizations, grew over time and have lots and lots of internal data silos, and recognize that if they were able to aggregate that data, they can tell a more strategic story and be more effective in the accomplishment of their mission. But they need to be able to do that while not exposing the personal data for the beneficiaries that they serve. DFID supports thousands of different nonprofits through their grant structures, and they're looking for ways that they can get the data, the result data, back from their grantees into a single data store and tell a strategic story back out for that. So it's really two different views of kind of a similar problem. One, a nonprofit that wants to become more efficient, and another, a grantor that wants to become more efficient in how they can get some predictive analytics about where they invest their next dollar compared to how much impact they would expect to make. So with that, I'm going to stop comments. We have a few minutes for questions. I want to make sure everybody has a chance to get out of here in time to make the closing keynote. So any questions? Someone's got to be first. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so right now the Essentials Toolkit, good reminder, the Essentials Toolkit is in private preview right now. We're working on, so we'll have a public date for that we'll publish at Inspire in July. Okay, thanks everybody.